Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary Series, and here at Shots Out, which you are familiar with if you've been watching these videos. And today I'm in a kind of different location. I'm in one of the three Kaiserzimmern, which means the Kaiser's rooms. And these are the corner rooms on the east side. And all of the balconies have these window panes that you can see behind me. This one doesn't look out on another balcony in this direction because it's the corner room, but it's one of the few where the paint has been scraped off the glass, or maybe there never was paint on these particular panes. The other ones were painted red for privacy. And one of the plans is to get rid of all that paint on the panes of glass on the other balconies. And some of them have a kind of beveled glass that allows you still to have privacy. But since this one is on the corner, they didn't use that kind of glass. So it's not as big as the balconies in some of the other rooms, including the one that I've been out on, and 109, and Dmitri's balcony, 309. If you come here and you want a really big balcony, then you want to take one of the 09 rooms. Anyway, this is on the second floor. Can't even remember the room number. You can see the Liegestühle. The hotel will be opening in a few days, and then these will put down and with the mattresses on them, the cushions, and ready to be used. And here behind me is the door leading into the balcony next door. So the doctor, as I've mentioned before, could go from balcony to balcony and not have to go down the corridor and through the room. So now I'm going into the Kaiserzimmer, the second floor Kaiserzimmer. And these rooms are bigger. The rooms themselves are quite a bit bigger than the 09s. Even though those are big rooms, comparatively speaking, the Kaiserzimmer are bigger. And they have these chaises longues. And, it may not look like anything special, but they also have these really fancy bathrooms. Much bigger than the other bathrooms. And with I believe it's marble. Real marble, not some kind of fake. And this is the actual bathroom, and then the water closet is a separate little room. I guess you don't need to see the toilet. It's not antique, which is probably a good thing. So I decided, as far as I know, Dmitri never was in one of these rooms. But I just thought I'd come in here today anyway, since it was open, and once the hotel is full of guests, I won't be able to just choose whatever room I want to go into for the video. So now I'm trying to set this up, sit down on the chaise longue, and tell you what the surprise is for today. I didn't know myself until a few hours ago, and I started browsing through my 1939 stuff, and I found a letter that was written to Maria, but not to Dmitri, or not by Dmitri, although Dmitri is one of the big topics of the letter. And it's a 1939 letter. It was written before Dmitri arrived at Schatzalpitz. The date is 3rd of June, 1939. It's written by our friend Constantin Constantinovich Grunwald, who's been mentioned before, who is acting as a kind of almost spy for Maria when she wasn't around, keeping an eye on Dmitri for her and reporting back to her. I don't know if she actually asked him to do that, but he was doing it. And I don't know how they'd gotten to know each other. Grunwald was a very intelligent and respected man. He was a journalist and a historian. His background was in the law, and he'd also been a diplomat. And so, yeah, an impressive person as far as his level of education. But he always seems a little, I don't know, what's the word? I'm searching for the word. He always seems a little off-putting to me because he's kind of insinuating and kind of, he flatters her and tries to be far too courtly. And, I know he annoyed Dmitri, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was a great guy. Anyway, he has a son who's a grandson who's a telejournalist now, who I've always meant to try and get in touch with. I need to do that. I keep wasting all these opportunities. Okay, so I decided, what the heck? This is a very interesting letter. It has a lot of information about Dmitri, although, you'll have to judge for yourself how reliable you think Konstantin Konstantinovich was. Dmitri sometimes gives a different account of things than what Konstantin is telling Maria. So I decided, I promised a 1939 surprise yesterday, and I also said there would be an interesting diary entry for the 4th of January 1915, where Dmitri writes a kind of Dear Jane letter to a woman that I hadn't even known he'd been involved with. And, you can tell me when you hear what he says about that, whether it does indeed sound to you like a breakup letter that he's sending her. But I don't want to keep you waiting on that, but I went ahead and did this translation. I did this translation, and so I thought, well, I'm not going to do two separate videos like I did yesterday. Instead, I'm going to just do the 1915 one tomorrow. So, forgive me if you were waiting for that it's delayed by one day. Anyway, I better get going because I've already been talking for almost 10 minutes. Okay, so yesterday we had, for 1939, we had 2 postcards that Dmitri wrote to his friend and assistant, Kasyaninov, in a pretty good mood, but worried about his things, his furniture and his books that were in storage. So that was something that he was hoping, obviously, that Kasyaninov could do something about. He wanted them to be kept in a friend's stable that he said was nice and dry. Okay, so I do not want here we go. So Constantin Grunwald was writing to Maria in French, and so I've done the translation this time from the French, and she was in the U.S., so we'll talk about that again. The address that he gives for himself is 3 Rue de Pérouse in Paris. The date is the 3rd of June, 1939. And here we go. Before I forget, I just wanted to mention, yes, if any of you looked at the Wikipedia article on the Nansen passport, yes, indeed, Maria is included on the list of famous people who had Nansen passports. But I found out today, doing a little reading on Maria, that she did not have a Nansen passport. She had one, but by this time she had a Swedish passport. Even though she wasn't a Swedish citizen per se, her son was Swedish, she had a Swedish passport, and so she had a much easier time of it than Dmitri. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Your Imperial Highness, you will never know the intense joy I feel each time the little mauve pages with their closed crowns come to me from across the ocean, bringing me news of my snow princess. This joy was particularly great upon the arrival of her latest letter. He's using the 3rd person to refer to her. My last letter had not received a response. I hope it reached you, madam. It contains a stenographic transcript of an extraordinary conversation I had with an official from the German War Ministry. Grand Duke Dmitri also complains that nobody writes to him anymore. And it was not through the newspapers, which published photos of you in Hollywood with Isa Miranda, but only through Mr. Matis, and on a few other rare occasions, that echoes of your Imperial Highness's peregrinations have reached us. And I'm going to stop there. It's not a terribly long letter. My initial plan had been to do two in the same video, to return to doing 1939 and 1915 in the same video. So I decided to stop after one paragraph. But anyway, there's a lot to talk about. And I kind of wasn't reading that very well. I should have said, Grand Duke Dmitri also complains that nobody writes to him anymore. So Grunwald was complaining a little bit, that she hadn't written to him, and telling her that Dmitri also is unhappy that she hasn't apparently been writing to him, and that the only news they get, of course, is from, other sources. Okay, and by the way, Grunwald was older than Dmitri and Maria. He was in his late 50s at this time, and they were both still, Maria might have been 50, but Dmitri was 48. Okay. So it would be interesting to know what the nature of their relationship is. I mean, Maria, so far as I know, had lovers. She'd had one very wealthy lover, French lover in the past, and was Grunwald sort of trying to court her a little bit? Is this whole thing about my Snow Queen? I don't know, but it's a little, I don't know. Like I said, he just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Anyway, we find out that she had been away from Dmitri for a while. So we've seen the instance where she Sorry, someone coming through. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Sorry, I just fell silent on you there for a moment. You probably thought I'd seen a ghost, but I did not. It was a living person who's coming through to do some work on the balcony. Okay, where was I? So we know that they had this final dinner together last time they saw each other in person in September 1939, but apparently at this point in June, she was in the U.S. She'd gone to the U.S. You can read about that in her second volume of memoirs. She would be back, was the point I was trying to make, in time to have this final dinner with Dmitri. Anyway, what was she doing in the U.S.? Well, she wasn't writing letters, by and large, but so there's a reference to this woman named Isa Miranda. So I had to look her up. I had no idea who she was. Apparently, there were photos of her and Maria together in some newspapers, and she was an Italian actress, born 1905, died 1982. She had an eventful year in 1939. She made a Hollywood film, and she got married. I don't know the months for either of those, but the funny thing about her, I mean, that's all well and good. At least we sort of know who she was. But the funny thing about her is that she actually played Alexandra. She played the Empress of Russia in a French-Italian production of a movie about Rasputin. There's a Russian version. There's, the Hollywood versions that Felix Yusupov successfully sued MGM over. There was a later Hammer horror version from, I think, the 60s or 70s. And this one came out in 1954. And I wonder what Maria thought about that. Dmitri had already passed away, of course. But she played Alexandra. Kind of funny. I really did my best to find this movie on YouTube and, Googled where can I watch it, and you just can't find it anywhere. So it's a pity because there's a cast list on the Internet Movie Database, and they're not made up characters. It's not just Rasputin and then made up characters. Apparently they weren't worried about a lawsuit, and so you have the characters with their proper names of Felix Yusupov, Dmitri, so on and so forth. Anyway, couldn't find it. If any of you have better luck, let me know. The only movie that I've seen that she was in was Shoes of the Fisherman, which was before my time, I think, but I saw it later on video or streamed it. I don't know who Mr. Matis is, who's giving them some news about her. I don't know who this official was at the German War Ministry, and I don't know why Grunwald had these connections. Dmitri says that if it wasn't for Grunwald, he wouldn't have been able to get a visa to come to Switzerland with his Nansen passport. And also, he credited Grunwald with arranging that. And apparently, Grunwald has, very important contacts. Maybe because of his former career as a diplomat and also his present career as a journalist at that time. And yeah, wouldn't I just love to see that transcript? He sent her a transcript of this conversation, this fascinating conversation that he had with this war ministry official months before the war started. And I'm so surprised. Dmitri was so worried that if he even, wrote a little bit about politics or included a few words of Russian, that his letters were not going to get through. And here's Grunwald writing all kinds of stuff, including this transcript. But on the other hand, the war hadn't started yet when Grunwald wrote, and it had started when Dmitri wrote. Okay. Anything else? Well, just to say, next time we will have, tomorrow we'll be in 1915 and we'll have Dmitri's Dear Jane letter. And then when we go back on, what day will that be? Thursday, to 1939, we're going to find out more about Maria's hard life. Dmitri and Grunwald, although one was in September and one is in June, both reacted to what Maria told them by saying, "Oh, how horrible, this makes me feel really bad for you." We will find out, I think, more from Grunwald about that than we'll find out from Dmitri. So that will be very interesting. I hope you'll come back for both of those. And Grunwald will also go so far as to give Maria his advice, whereas Dmitri is more hands-off and doesn't say anything to her. So, yeah, good time to finish up, I guess. I'll see you next time. Bye.